Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. We'll be just starting in another 5 minutes once we have all the participants in.
Hi everyone. Hi Mohan.
Hi, Vilva. Am I audible?
Yeah, Prakash.
Hi. It's great to have you here. And Shivam had some connectivity issues, and so I would be taking over.
No
And
worries.
it's great to have you on board.
Thank you.
And we would be starting in just a few seconds. Let us see that the stream is working fine and it's working. So the moment I'll check the stream once, and if it's fine, we'll just go live.
Sure.
I'll move your presentation to the screen, and whenever you are comfortable, we can start. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good. We can start. All set? Can we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me move on to the slides. So, good afternoon, good night, everybody. Uh, so today we'll be seeing about what, how, and when to solve problems in JavaScript world. That's a typo. Shit. Okay, fine. I'll change it quickly. First, a little introduction about me. My name is Vilva. I work for a company called Omeo. It's a travel startup. I'm based in Berlin. Also, I do a lot of teaching. Like I teach JavaScript, GraphQL, React, and all the stuff with JSFactory.in. And also, in terms of open source, I'm very active contributor of the open source. I contribute to few famous libraries like Apollo, Material UI, and all the stuff. And I'm also the creator of Tailwind, which is a recent library I have built, a combination of styled components and Tailwind CSS, and also HQL tag, a wrapper like utility application for using Hasura. It makes the code look better. And I do write blogs, I do make videos on YouTube, but I'm highly irregular at it. Like I'm not consistent at all. But that's the reason I'm being irregular about it, because I don't do it for the sake of doing. I do it only when I found a worthy piece of information to share. And like you can see, JavaScript, React Native, GraphQL, that's what I do on daily basis. I also do a bit of Node.js, CouchDB, and all the stuff, but that's not my prime focus areas. And you can follow me in any social platform using the name Vilva Adiban. Like perks of having a unique name, like you can share, search for it, and you will get only me in every social platform. Cool. Let's dive into the topic. Um, Let me give you a fair idea of how this talk is going to look like, because like people who have attended my previous talks or previous sessions, mostly I'm a person who believes in showing the code and not doing the talks alone. I generally show some, mostly I do live codings, or like at least I show some code walkthroughs and code demos. But today, this is not going to be a talk on code. It is going to be a talk on ideology, a thought process, of course. So today there'll be no code, there'll be no demos. It's going to be complete talking. So be prepared for it. First thing, like what are the tech problems? Like we say problems, right? Like what are all things which we can call as tech problems? Anything that breaks your app. Let me go full screen. Okay. Anything that breaks your app is a problem. And what are the possible things which can break your app? Error, a syntax error, an unupdated library, a failing test, a change in the backend contract. There are so many things which can break your app. This is the most important problem for any app. Second thing is anything that degrades your app. Say your website was loading in like 3 seconds, and you made a change, a small feature, and it suddenly started loading in 4.5 seconds. That means your performance is degraded. Say you have written some new pieces of code without following any standards. That means the code quality is degraded. And say if you have written like if you have written a very unreadable code, then the readability is degraded. Any of such things still works. Like the output is so cool, the screen looks so better. Your product managers and the business people are going to love it, but it's going to affect your performance or quality of your app. Then it comes under degradation. Any unintended behavior. By unintended behavior, I mean, like you can say bugs as an example. You would have tried to make a change in some X part of an application, and suddenly a part of application which is nowhere related starts breaking. That is not foreseen. That is not intended. That's a issue because of a carelessness or because of miscommunication, and that those are the things which cause problems, and they fall under this category of unintended behavior. And any side effect. Mostly we use async programming in JavaScript world, and side effect is the common thing. Like these side effects sometimes can be avoided and sometimes can't be avoided. But still, if a side effect can't be avoided and it's remarkable or it's an impactful side effect, then we should always fall back and think about an other approach. And anything that can be better done better is also a problem. Like yeah, everything is good, everything is working fine, but of course there is always a room for improvement. And if you're not doing that, again, that falls under problems in tech field. These are all the definitions for what are all the problems we face generally in JavaScript world. So I have compiled, since the above definitions work for almost any technologies, not just JavaScript or not just front end or back end. The above 5 definitions are common for any problems across for any tech. And like in JavaScript world specifically, I have curated few problems. Of course, there are many, but I have curated the top ones which I feel as more important, or which I have solved in the past. These are the things I have solved in the past, or like I focus on solving when I get into a new code base. So let's start. Like, let me give a high definitions of what are the problems I have listed here. First thing is, the most important thing I look for in any application is performance. Because like, no matter how bad your code looks on the like for a developer, no matter how bad the developer experience is for a developer, end of the day, as per my perspective, we build an application. Sorry about the notification. We build an application for the end user, right? So always, ultimately, our end user is our boss, and we should make sure he is not interrupted at any cost. So performance comes as the top priority for me in any problems. And a disclaimer: all these things are subjected to market risk. All these are my personal opinions, so don't come fighting with me on any of this. Performance is the topmost priority thing which I look for as a problem in any JavaScript application. Second thing is code splitting. Like, I'm not sure if how many of you people have encountered this, but personally, when I entered new organizations, when I moved from company to company, there are multiple times I had to hit a React component, which is like 1,500 lines of code. It's so insane, I'll say, like having 1,500, 2,000 lines in a single file. When you start reading the 200th line of code, you will already start forgetting what's there in the 50th or 60th line of code. No matter you minimize it, there'll be too much of scrolling. It actually affects your productivity, and it actually affects your thought process. And also, this code splitting is also a indirect problem for performance as well. For instance, I have seen many applications who bundle the vendor files in the sense the libraries you use, like React, Redux, and all the stuff, as well as the custom code or the code written by the developer together into a single bundle. This is not required at all, because you are not going to update a library for every run. So obviously, you can split those code. Usability. This usability is more specific to the UX side of it. Since it's JavaScript world, usability is something which I focus more as well. For instance, when you get a design from your UX designer or the design person, you can see some beautiful designs. Like, no designer is going to make a design which doesn't look good, but here and there you can see people doing some mistakes. For instance, there was an instance where one of our designer had to make a table, and the table was horizontal scroll for mobile. I was okay in horizontal scroll even for desktop. Generally, I'm not a fan of horizontal scroll, but I'm still fine with it if it's desktop. But when it comes to mobile, then it's a big problem, because in most of the mobiles, if you move towards the left or right, it takes you to the previous and forward pages. So if he doesn't click exactly on the table and scroll it, he is going to end up in another website, actually going to leave our website. So that's something. And reusability, the thing which I highlighted, this is something which I focus more on. Like, It may not be my most favorite as much as performances, but it is the most important thing I feel in terms of a developer, not in terms of a user. Reusability in the sense like taking out your code and making it reusable for others to use. Redundant code, like this is a common problem most of the developers do. Either it's out of laziness or either it's out of ignorance, but redundant code is a existing problem in the tech world. Like we write a code, it becomes invalid, we don't use it anymore, but we forget to remove it because we focus on writing better code, we focus on writing new features, and we never focus on removing things which we never needed. Redundant code is like a garbage in your home. Like if you're going to clean it regularly, then it's fine. If you just leave it to just stay there, it's going to stink very bad at a later point of time. So yeah. And conventions and standards, this is a very big problem in terms of developers when you're working across teams and across locations, because when you don't have a proper conventions or proper standards across teams and for all the developers, everybody are going to use their most favorite way of using it. Like I don't like adding semicolons, somebody else might like adding semicolons, and few people may be interested in using if else, few people may be interested in ternary operator. And end of the day, when people start working on the same repository across teams, we are going to have a mess of different type of code. Like, and the most common thing is this async await and fetch. Few people use promises, few people use async await. That's again a very dirty way of seeing two different type of codes. And anti-patterns are the things which we shouldn't be which are proved that it will affect your applications. It's already enough research is done and it's already been proved, and that's the reason we should always avoid anti-patterns. And innovations, like to rephrase it, I'll say innovations is not a problem, but lack of innovations is a problem. We always know so many tools existing, but we never think how to make use of it. That's the problem of lack of innovation. And choosing right tools, like our JavaScript world specifically has this problem of choosing right tools, because if you just open the internet for a single use case, you will have multiple tools in JavaScript, and first finding which one is the right one and which one is the appropriate one, which has less issues, which can be used in production. There are so many checklists before using a tool in your application. So this is a very big problem. And more than everything, when you work as a, like in a small company where there are only 2 developers, it's not a big issue. But in a medium-sized company or an enterprise company, communication, like things like docs, things like manuals, confluence pages, all this are the top priority, because anytime you get new developers, when you don't have a proper communication, it's not going to work at all. Like you have to spend lots of time in knowledge transfer and all the shit, which is in my personal opinion is completely waste of time. So it's better to maintain a good docs rather than because even as a developer, we forget few things if we don't document it. Initially, I used to hate document when I was starting my career, because I feel like I'm a developer. I should be writing code. Why should I be writing text? That's not my job. That's what the feeling I had. But as I grew up and matured technically, I felt the importance of documents. Now let's see few ways of how to solve the problems which we discussed right now. Let's again go in the same order. Performance. The common things which we have to look for performance, or the low hanging fruits which can be done easily. I'll be talking about few of those things. First thing is your unused JavaScript in the bundle. Like if you open your Chrome DevTools, you can see perfectly like what is the JavaScript being downloaded, what is the CSS being downloaded. You can order it based on the sizes or based on the requirements, and that will reveal that you are importing or you are using a lot of unwanted JavaScript in your application. Removing unwanted JavaScript first makes an application better. Second thing can be like differing and differing your bundles. Like you don't need every bundle at the start of your application. So you need to make sure that you load only the critical code, be it critical CSS or be critical JavaScript, which is required for your initial load of your application, and later you can actually lazy load the other pieces of bundle based on your requirements. And also the other beautiful concept which I'll start digging or started to experiment in recent times in terms of performance is prefetching. Google has a JavaScript library, guest.js. I'm not sure how many people know it. This is using Google Analytics with machine learning models to actually prefetch code for your next page. What it does is it tracks all your users' activities for quite some time. It creates a machine learning model. It takes data about, okay, if a user is coming to page A, next if he is going to page B or page C, and based on that, it creates a machine learning model. And based on the results of the model, it automatically preloads or prefetches the next page when the user is in the current page. This gives a magic experience for the user. I'm still not 100% sure how better or how best the machine learning model works, but as an idea itself, it's so fascinating. And even if you're not using guest.js, you can always prefetch your anticipated next page. For instance, if you're in a booking flow, always if from login page, you are always going to go to the enter your address page. So those are the best use cases for prefetching. These are all the quick or like low hanging fruits which can be done immediately on performance. Of course, there are other fine tuning things like which we'll be discussing, which will add to performance but falls under other categories in the list of problems. Code splitting, of course. Code splitting helps us in two ways. There are by code splitting I mean two things. One, bundle splitting, which helps for performance and easy maintenance of an application. Two, actual code splitting into different files, that is for developer experience. So code splitting affects both the user as well as the developer. So when it comes to bundle splitting, there are so many bundlers like Webpack, Rollup, and Snowpack, and so many stuff which does out of the box code splitting and like bundle splitting. But it's always better like you spend more time on bundle splitting, so it's going to be super smooth. For instance, you don't have to send your entire bundle to the user. You can split it into two things, as I said previously. One is your main bundle, which is all the code you have written, and other is your vendor bundle, all the code you have installed using npm or yarn. And with vendor bundle, you can actually add a hash and cache it in the browser. The vendor bundle is going to stay the same unless you are going to update some library, and you are not going to update a library every single day or every single minute. Hence, the user will always get the vendor bundles from the cache, and only the vendor bundle will be updated when there is a change of hash value. And this particular hash value will change when you change any of the dependencies. So as beautiful as that, you are not going to download the vendor bundles on user side quite often. And again, coming to main bundle, yeah, it's good to have main bundle and vendor bundle splitted, but there is also lazy loading of main bundle as well. Like for a home screen, you are not going to require entire of the main bundle or entire of the code you have written. You are just going to require only a part of it. So what you can do is you can again split the main bundle into multiple bundles and load it like lazy load it when the user is idle, or load it on requirement, like when the user is requiring for a particular piece of data or particular piece of the application, you can load it dynamically. These are the things with bundle splitting. And when it comes to the user code splitting, my personal favorite number is 150 lines. Any file which is more than 150 line, I consider it to be unreadable. I always stick to have my lines in a single file less than 100. So it's so clear, like I can see top to bottom what's happening within that file. And also, like it's always good practice to split code and keep it in a separate files. So wherever you need it, you don't have to copy paste it. You can directly start importing and using it. And next comes usability. How to solve usability? So this is not your area of work. It's the work of a UX engineer. And there will be so many things like user testing, like they do user research, user testing, so many things before they even give us the design. But what they fail to understand is, like, most of the times they give a perfect designs, like most of our UX designers are like exceptionally talented, but what they fail to understand at times are the technical glitches. Few designs look good, the user will love it, but when they start using it practically, they will have pain in the ass. That is why it's always good to have a meeting with the UX designer, or before even finalizing the design, and you can actually check what are the things feasible, what are the things will have create issues when you are implementing using your technology stack. Like one of the example is the horizontal scroll. I'll never encourage a horizontal scroll in any of the mobile websites. This is how you can solve usability. Reusability. Here comes the most important part. How to solve reusable things. So you need to define the problem, or like the piece of code which solves a problem. For instance, say you face a problem, and you want to solve it. First, you need to decide whether this problem is going to reoccur in your application again and again, or it is going to be a single time problem. If it's a single time problem, just solve it, do whatever you want, and just move ahead with your next work. If it's going to occur again and again in your application, like for instance, people who use GraphQL, if they need a data type like date time, we don't have it. If you're going to create a use case for handling date time, then it's so obvious that you're going to need it across the application, because date time is a common thing which will be needed across the application. So what you can do when you feel like this problem will reoccur at other parts of the application, you can make it into a utility function or like a shared function or common code. And the next step is, after making it into a common code, just see if this is a common problem for the community or for your company. Like few problems are only company specific, like every team in your company will have those, while few problems are like community specific, like everybody using the technology will have those. If that is the case, make sure this library is completely customizable, or that piece of code is completely customizable, and extract it as npm package. It can be your private registry if it's a company problem, and or like open sourced npm package if it's a community problem. And how these things help you with this reusability of this code. Two things happen. One, you are solving problems for your use case. Two, you are donating the code, or like your hard work for the community. And when you are donating, you should make sure it is usable for everybody, and that's where your actual learning starts. When you start making it customizable, when you start making sure it works for everybody, you will start thinking about so many use cases. That's when you grow as a developer actually. You start thinking about rare scenarios, you start thinking about different possible problems which this particular piece of code can solve. And all these things happen only when you start contributing back to the community. And also this, obviously, when it solves a bigger problem, it naturally increases your public profile, naturally increases your hiring capabilities. Like when you're attending an interview, people who see an open source library in your resume will be more impressed than seeing, like, generally speaking, if not only me, like I have heard this from many people. When they're interviewing candidates, say there are two people, person A and person B, and if person A has like he has written 10 blogs and given 20 tech talks, and person B has only one open source library but he has done a good job there, people are not going to consider person A over person B. So like, open source code is something which is solid, which tells us that you are capable of. So what I'll say is, this is something which Siddharth KP told me like 3 years back when we were speaking somewhere. And he told me about a concept of 10%. What is this 10%? All of us face problems, all of us solve it. But after, we see it only as Jira tickets, or we see it only as a task at office. And after solving it, we just go out with our work. What he told me is, spend extra 10%, make sure the problem you solved, like it has solution already on the internet, which is very good. If it doesn't have, then you create the solution, All you need is that 10% extra to make it more flexible for others to use. This was doing magic to me, and that's how I started entering this open source world. And redundant code. Nowadays, using Webpacks and the bundlers, JavaScript code, redundant code is handled so smoothly. But I'm focusing on redundant code of CSS. Of course, there is purge CSS, which you can use to remove the unused piece of codes when you're using class names. But things like stale components and all this stuff, you should be very clear. Like when you are changing something in terms of CSS, and if you feel some code is not being used, just go ahead and delete it. Like don't save it. Like we Indians have a habit of saving things for the future. Don't do that with code, because anyways you are going to have everything in GitHub. And if you need some code from the past, you can always go and search your commits and obviously find the code which you deleted. So your code is not going anywhere, it's safe somewhere. But don't keep it in your active code base, because it's going to create a lot of mess at a later point of time. And with conventions and standards, this thing is like, either if you are on the deciding authority, like if you are going to decide, then have a meeting with all your colleagues, ask for suggestions. Definitely everybody will not be happy, but get a majority suggestion and follow some pre-existing standards or create your own standards. I personally love Airbnb standards very much for JavaScript, but you can, for that matter, you can use any standards. Also, you can create your own standards based on your conversation with your colleagues and other stuff. Next thing is anti-patterns. What are the anti-patterns and how to solve this or how to tackle those? Anti-patterns are the things which are proved already that using this will be a issue or will be a mistake in a long term or in a short term. And not necessarily every anti-pattern is an anti-pattern for you. Identify if something is an anti-pattern for you, because few anti-patterns are unavoidable based on your architecture and based on your implementation. So either you should change your implementation or embrace the anti-pattern. And few good patterns can be an anti-pattern based on your implementations. So just don't go by the books, just look out as well. Innovations. This is something which I guess every developer should develop. It's not something which is naturally present in every developer. This comes as you experiment, as you fail, as you start doing stuff without giving up. It starts with. For instance, innovations don't have to be magical. You don't have to be the next Elon Musk to innovate something with SpaceX and stuff. This can be just merging two tools. Like all of us know so many tools, all of us are using so many tools, and we believe this can be done only for this. Like tool A can be done only for doing job X. That need not be the truth always. Try to mismatch, like it's all permutation and combination. Mix your tools, rearrange those, and try using it again for solving different problems. Maybe my recent library Tailwind is one such approach, where I personally love Tailwind CSS a lot. But I'm also addicted to the readability I get with styled components, because pushing all my styles away of my JSX code, this lets me focus clearly. When I use style components, if I have some issues with styles, I'm not going to look at my JSX or my functions or my hooks. I'm just going to look only at my styles. And if I have some issues with my logics, I'm not going to look at my styles at all. So this way my code is abstracted and it's very smooth for me to use. But there was no way that I could use both together. And that's how I started developing Tailwind. And I guess that's pretty cool. Like people who are using it are giving very good feedbacks about the usability. They have some comments as well. Like we are still in beta, but I'm sure when we go as a version 1 release, people will start loving it a lot, because already the response is so cool. Like even people who are against it, when they start using it for a pet project, they started liking it like in 5-10 minutes of usage. So I have big bets on it. Next is choosing right tools. How to solve the problem of choosing right tools? First thing is, see the stars and issues in GitHub. That tells you a lot. If there are more stars, then it means it's already pretty famous. Then see the number of issues. The number of issues can be more, but see if it's being responded regularly. See if it's being fixed regularly. This tells that this particular tool is very active, and we can rely on this tool. And if the stars are low, just stick on to the issues alone, because we as users are so selfish. We just use the libraries and we never care to give a star or like. That's because we are more focused on our work and not on encouraging somebody else. So many good libraries have low stars, but that doesn't mean they are not good enough. Just see how well they are maintained. That's the main thing you need to choose, decide when you have to choose a tool. And second thing is, try to always solve the issues within within the time given, within the tools given already. Like, you never know there's a X tool which have a Y feature which can solve your Z problem. For these things, you should always be aware of a tool completely. Most of us just use a tool for the use case we have, and we never care to dig deep into it or go around more about it. To avoid this, it's always good to go through the entire documentation of a tool before using it, so you know what are the problems this particular tool can solve. And that can do magic in your code bases and in your developments and also in your mindsets. This is with how to solve the problem of choosing right tools. And communication or the docs, if you're a big company, there's no excuse. You have to maintain a docs, because without that, you are going to enter a big hell later at a later point of time. And if you are a medium-sized or small company with less number of developers, there are two ways I will maintain docs for these type of places. One, using auto doc generations, like many tools are there which generates documents based on your comments within the code base. Either I'll follow that, or if you are going to be even smaller team, which are purely technical, I'll have test. My test cases are actually an indirect way of documenting things on how a particular component works, how the functionality is expected, and all this stuff. So these are the ways I'll solve the issues with communications. And the last question is when to solve the problems, right? So this is a general solution for all the problems. So what are the when to solve a problem is a very personal question, or like very situational question. There is no common answer for when to solve a problem. For all these problems, few problems are very important, like conventions and standards. It should be solved at the earliest, because the more early you solve it, the more better at a later point of time. Same way with documentation, you should start it very early. So always first list your problems, then prioritize those. And no company in the world is going to give you all time for doing tech stuff, like tech related stuff. Maybe performance, yes, because they are interested in users, retaining users. Usability, yes, but other things like anti-patterns, innovations, redundant code, reusability, all this stuff, companies don't give more focus on it. At least not the companies, but the product people and business people don't give much focus on it. So how to solve those problems? Like, you can't spend your weekends or personal time in solving those problems for your office. There can be few people who are doing that, and you may see the managers and other people appreciating them, but never do that mistake, because that's going to affect both them and everyone at a later point of time. Once you start delivering, there will be always high expectations on you. They will always expect you to work on weekends. They will always expect you to stretch. So never do that. Be an average employee in the eyes of a manager. Just make sure you are a better person than last month to this month. That's all you have to look. So don't do all those things. How to convince your management and how to fix all these problems? It's so simple. First, prioritize all the problems. Then roughly estimate how much time you will need for all the problems, and make a the strict definition of tech debts. Like 20% or 10% of each sprint should be allocated only to solve your tech issues, and that you should be very strict about it as a developer or as a tech lead or something. And only with those things you can actually address these problems. Of course, you can sell problems like performance to the business, saying like this will increase their business and they'll give you time. But for other things, first set this, then pick up the problems. And there are when you're solving the problems, there are two things you need to consider: how urgent it is, and how big the problem is. If it's so urgent, say it's a production bug, it's making an issue with your payments, just make some hacky solution and push it to production, then sit and think what can be done. If it's a medium size issue or medium size things like conventions or standards or like reusability, or no, not reusability, but anti patterns, talk, get time for it, buy time from the management, think how it can be solved, create a decent to average code for it. And if it's something like a very big problem, not just for your project but for the company and for the community, then it falls under the decent solution. You should find a very good decent reusable solution, and this requires a lot of time, and definitely companies won't give you a lot of time for this. So again, split this big task into smaller decent solutions. So one big beautiful solution is a combination of many small decent solutions. And now you know how to solve your decent solutions already. Solve all those decent solutions, and at a time merge all this and give it to the world or your company. This is how you should first create the severity of the problem, then prioritize it, estimate it, then solve it step by step. And this is one more reason why I will suggest, at least in the early stages of a career, stay in one company for quite some time. So you will practically solve all these problems in your company, which will boost your knowledge to different extent. And once you get your knowledge, you don't have to worry about your job or like worry about a company. Like any company you point will obviously be interested in talking to you. So start developing things in this way. These are the things on what are the problems to solve, how to solve, and when to solve. So in summary, find a solution to a problem only when it's a problem. Again, like there are a few things, as I said, can be an anti-pattern as per the books, but not necessarily a problem for your implementation because your architecture is like that. Of course, then it means you have a bad architecture, but you can't change it overnight. So not every problem is actually a problem. First, check if it's actually a problem. Second, if it's a recurring problem, then make it a reusable solution. Just don't fix it for now and move ahead with your other job. Second, then the next thing is, based on the time you have, if you have a very less time, find a quick hacky solution. Like you have to fix a bug in 1 hour, then just go for a hacky solution. All you require at that point is it should work. It should not break business. Because end of the day, we may be tech guys, but end of the day, we work for a business. We work for making money to some business person. And second is, if you have a manageable time, like maybe a decent amount of time, then create an average solution, but keep that in mind or keep that in track at some place. And when you have enough time, create a decent reusable solution. And a perfect solution is never a practical thing. It's always a dream, but you can make the dream come true with continuous efforts on multiple decent solutions. Like as I said, build multiple decent solutions, combine it, and then create a perfect solution. That's how all the products have come in. Like if you see the history, that's how everything has worked. So I rest here, and this is time for QA. Anyone who have questions can ask it. I'm going to the comments. I'm looking at the comments. If you have any questions, you can just post it in the comments. I'll answer it now.
So until Vilva, I feel if people are putting in questions, I have a few questions from my end I wanted to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, for example, if I have chosen that this is going to be the Webpack for me. For example, if I'm a developer in Angular or if I'm a developer on React, so is it advisable to choose other Webpacks too, like either go for Vue or either, for example, if I'm doing an Angular job, should I take a job in Vue as well, or should I take a job in React as well just to explore, or I should stick to one?
So that again depends on how you see yourself, because knowing multiple technologies is definitely a safer bet, but like knowing only one thing is like a risky bet. For instance, I had multiple chances of working with Vue or Angular. At least with Vue, I got mild chances of how it looks, but I never got into Angular world at all, because reason is simple for me. For me, whatever I know, I wanted to know in depth. I wanted to know everything of it. And when you spend time in it, you will not have enough time to spend on other things. And more than React, I'm a GraphQL enthusiast. And in GraphQL, I know many things in compiler levels. I know many things in internals of GraphQLs. So that way I spend my time, and I don't widen my knowledge. I just go in depth, because I always say, if you know multiple frameworks, you are a good developer. You are a reusable developer, and the company needs you. But when you go in depth, you are the leader. Like people are come for your opinion and your thoughts before making any decisions. So that's how you take it.
But do you feel, is there a specific technology, like for example, there was Node.js, but now we just heard about a new tech called Denuvo. It came into the market, and it's from the maker of React.js, and they are very much peculiar that this is better than what we wanted Node to be. So a person who is way more rehearsed with Node.js, would he or she would be shifting to Denuvo, or they would be staying upon the Node.js structure?
Okay, this is a good question. Not just with this Node.js and Deno.js. This is a problem with many tools actually, with which people are facing. What I'll say is, till now we have code bases which are running in jQuery. Still now many people use Java. It doesn't mean like when a new technology comes in, it's going to change everything overnight. So if at all I'm in that position, what I'll do is, if there is a new beautiful thing coming in, I'll just have an eye on it. And unless I really have a use case in my job, I'll not learn it. And definitely I'll have an eye on it and see the trends. If many people start using it in future, if many people start liking it and giving good reviews, then maybe I'll give a small try and stop it right there. I'll only pick it up when actually companies start using it. Not the quick startups which peak here and there, but when actually enterprises or when actually good companies start using it, then I know, okay, this is going to be the next thing. Till then, I'll never go into a new stuff just because it's getting fame or just because somebody's giving good comments. I'm not getting into it.
So you need something established thing to happen upon it. Then it's the right time to move on it.
Exactly, because many things. For instance, Next.js came like 4-5 years before. I'm not sure, like not 4-5 years, 3-4 years before. And even 2.5 years before, Next.js was not that great. It had so many issues. Even with its sixth version, it was not that great. And nobody even cared about it back then. But I felt it's promising. I just had a quick overview, but then I dropped it right away. Like I had a small tutorial of it. I built something small. I did some benchmarking, wrote a blog about it. Then I left it in the middle of nowhere. I never went back to it. And after fast forward 2.5 years, now Next.js is so beautiful. Many companies started using it actually in their production applications. Now I picked it up again.
Okay. We have questions on our YouTube feed. We have from Mohammed Mustafa. What approach should we take while learning JavaScript? What are some good career options for a JavaScript programmer? So it's a very broad question, but I would love to hear your part.
Yeah, as you said, it's so broad, but to be precise, iterative learning. Like I have another video in YouTube, like which explains clearly on how to be a self-taught web developer. But in one word, if I have to say, when you learn something, not just for JavaScript, you learn something, you are not going to understand all of it. So just learn it, build something, learn it again. Now you understand more of it. Again, build something, learn it again. Now you understand most of it. So this process of iterative learning helps you learn anything in the world, actually. So, and with career options as a JavaScript programmer, pretty much you can do anything. You can work on the cloud, you can work on the backend, you can work on front end, you can work on AR, VR. So just that you need to decide on which place you are going to work and establish your skills based on that. Even machine learning has TensorFlow.js, so it's pretty much everywhere. Next question: how to improve logic in JavaScript or React? That comes only out of practice, actually. Like see people coding, actually. Like there are a lot of live codings which are recorded, live streamings recorded in YouTube. Just see how people are coding and how they are solving the logics. that will give you an inspiration actually. And next question, how to improve the skill of estimating time for a feature development? Only by getting smashes here and there. Like you estimate it low, you will be fucked up, you will be stressed to complete it, then you will estimate it better this time. So only through that way you can actually get the skill of estimating time, because everybody makes this mistake. They estimate it low and they get bashed up by their manager, and so much they take up so much stress. Then they evolve, then they know when to say no, where to say no, then they know how to defend themselves and all this stuff. Yeah.
So, are you a tutor? So, do you learn through tutorials, or do you go for books, or what do you basically prefer when you are learning a new tech? Or for example, you're getting a hang of anything new out there. So you just go jump right into the tutorials, watch Maximilian, very famous guy, or do you just go from docs, or do you prefer docs, or do you prefer books on it? How what is your learning curve, or what is your learning path whenever you are going through?
Okay, I have a clear flow chart of it. I'll check if I can share it in here somewhere. Okay, I'm not sure where to find it at the moment, but to be short, first I start with docs, official docs, no matter which technology it is. Sometimes docs are so clear you can just go with the flow. Sometimes it's not. Then I go watch a video of it, grasp the concepts, read the docs again. And once I read the docs, like I said, I build some application. A smaller one, not an enterprise level, just a smaller hello world stuff. Then again I read the docs. I build a bit more complex application. Then again I read the docs. Once I build three things, then I know I feel confident about the library of stuff. Next thing is I'll go ahead and start, like, if I love that technology, if I don't like it, I'll just drop it there and move ahead with my life. If I like it, I'll go in depth in reading the source codes, thinking about the problems this particular library has, how to solve those. So I'll just push my energy into those areas. This is how I learn any new technologies. I don't go for complete video tutorials, because that don't stay in your mind.
Yeah. Pretty much what I just told my what I have been facing for long. Like, I used to follow a tutorial. I used to like, okay, I knew a tutorial, and now what I'm going to do, write the code myself, and it's absolutely, it's not even a subpar code what I write. We have Ganesh Mani. He's asking generalization versus specialization, which comes longer in our career.
I feel that's what career you need based on that. Like, if you want to be a technical manager, if you want to be a engineering manager, then generalization makes sense, because you are a person who is to manage everything. So the more things you know, the better manager you are, because you can manage people, you can think in terms of technology. But if you want to be an individual contributor or a principal engineer, a technical architect, those type of career, if that's your dream, then I feel specialization is good, because companies are good enough to hire people who know something very well, rather of hiring many people who know everything to some extent. So based on what you need in your career, I guess you should choose the path.
I have one more question before ending this. So there are startups and there are people who don't go for a well architectured code when they are starting, and when they just go ahead to their product development, they feel that they have it's very late to just go back to the architecture and make it all right. So what is your opinion in that? What young entrepreneurs and young people who want to start their own products or who want to start their own things should do in that situation?
Actually, that's a very complicated scenario. Actually, the thing is, there are two ways. See, if you're going to build an application which you feel so close to your heart, and you are doing it alone, and you have all the time, and you are doing it in part time, then focus on architecture, because maybe you are going to spend next 3 years in building it all by yourself in after office. So when you don't have a proper architecture there, when you don't have proper testing there and all the stuff, then it's going to be a hell for you when you leave a gap for a month. But if it's a full-time startup, say you quit your company, quit your job, and you are going as a full-time entrepreneur, and you're taking a big risk, their timing is very important. Like many companies have failed not because they were not technically strong. They have failed only because they were not timely enough. They were not quick enough. Whereas you can see many big companies having shitty architecture but still being successful. Even with WordPress sites, there are successful companies. But like, but even with a very strong technical code bases, companies have failed. So until you reach a stable position, I don't think we should focus more on architecture. Of course, there are always low-hanging fruits which doesn't need more time. You should be focusing on those things, but you don't have to go for this micro optimizations like planning about scaling for million users directly on the first day. I don't think that's necessary initially. You can do it eventually.
Okay. So, what is your take on boilerplate code? What do you feel about using boilerplate code and such stuff into production? Should we do that, or is it advisable, or is it not?
Again, as I said, that's depending on your use case. Like if it's going to be a hackathon project or if it's going to be a startup who want to do their MVP, then boilerplate code is completely fine. But when you're going for a complete application, which you are going to you're planning of scaling to millions of users at a later point, then again, I'll not say boilerplate codes are bad, because now we have beautiful boilerplate codes. Like even Next.js is a boilerplate code. It scales to any extent. But thing is, when you configure your own stuff, you know each nook and corner of it, so you can control it no matter what changes comes in future. Like, say for instance, there can be a new tool which increases performance so beautifully, but it may not work with Webpack, or it may not work with Next.js. If you have done the configuration, you can always open it, put something in, and close it again. But if it's a general boilerplate, then that's not going to be possible. So these are the pros and cons.
Okay. Okay. And one last question I had. So our viewers are very young, and they have been preparing for placements, and they have been doing such stuff. So I want your take on projects versus competitive programming. What would you choose?
So if they want to get into very big companies like Amazon and Microsoft and all these things, obviously they don't care what projects you have done. All they need is the data structural algorithms and all the stuff. That's one way of career. And but if you want to really solve problems, build products from scratch, if you're entrepreneurial in mindset, if you want to join a startup, then I don't guess competitive programming matters. You can just focus on building projects.
So it depends on how much security do we want after graduation. People do want after graduation, what kind of security. So I guess the viewers, they are very super young viewers. Some of them I know personally. So I feel you have the answer over there. It's a long due question we have on Twitter, we have on in Discord channels or Slack channels, that what we should do. We should competitive program, what we should create projects, how should we balance every YouTube channel there. And coming from an experienced person like you, I feel this is the answer I really wanted to. So they have been preparing like it's a JEE exam for them. But I feel
the trend has become like that. Now I see so many people losing their personal life and doing everything just to get into some X company, like tank company, for instance. Like life is not all about that, I'll say, because people start somewhere and end up somewhere. People who have started their career in Google and Facebook have failed. People who have not had a job for 2 years have been more successful. So it's all about how you learn to handle your life, not about which company you enter or what package you get. So I guess people should start balancing their life. I'll not say don't code or like don't prepare. That should be there, but start balancing.
Yeah. So I feel that we all are in search of utopia. However we find it. Vilva, it was really great. I am your true fan on Twitter as well. So I've been following you, and it was really great to have you here. And Shubham just called me last minute, and it was like, I have some technical issue. You have to be there, and so I really wanted to be here. And truly, I am your JavaScript fan. And been connected to people like Amir was the one, Amir Jan from OLX people. He took this session. He introduced me about you. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, guys, for joining it. Truly, it was a great session. It was truly great. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vilva. Thank you, our viewers. See you in next webinar. And you can Send your regards and comments too, guys. Wilbur just spoke 1 hour for you. Okay, you have a question. How to get job in Berlin?
Right now, I guess it's close to impossible because of this corona thing. But I don't know how things are going to change after this as well, because everywhere things are changing, and even in local market we have so many engineers already jobless. So let's see maybe when things get better. And personally, if you ask me, I never applied for a company, or like I never went and applied for like went behind companies. Like I was just doing my job on open source and other stuff, and I started getting offers from I had offer from Berlin, from Sweden, from Portugal. I just picked up Berlin and came because it was in the center of the map.
So Berlin is doing fine in this lockdown season. I feel everything.
Yeah. Now things have become close to normal, but in terms of business, it's still a problem, I'll say.
Yeah, everybody's been hit due to this, and this has been a really off season this year has been.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, Vilva.
Yeah,
and thank you so much, guys, for joining. See you in the next session of Skill Dojo. And till then, stay safe. And Vilva, you too also stay safe.
Yeah, you too.
I would be ending the broadcast.